Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is 2016's Storm King's Thunder for D&D 5th edition by Wizards of the Coast. Also, I need to say thanks to my friend Stuart for letting me borrow his copy of this for the review. Okay, first a bit of history. Storm King's Thunder is a 256-page adventure set in the Forgotten Realms that takes players from levels 1 to 10, although it is advised that they could reach level 11. It is designed as a continuation of the story already established in the previously printed D&D modules Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. There'll be spoilers from this point on, so if you have any plans to play this is your one and only warning to stop reading. Okay, to the cover. Here, we have a really nice mood-establishing piece of art by Tyler Jacobson of the Storm Giant King Hecaton and his two children Mirren and Nim. Okay, to the inside. On the inside cover, we have the disclaimer: creatures and objects in this adventure are bigger than they appear, no giant beanstalks were damaged and no golden geese were harmed in the making of this book. A nice touch by the writers. First up, we have the table of contents and then a list of dramatis personae as a quick reference to the DM, very handy. Next, we have a list of giant runes and an introduction to the Savage Frontier and the basic plot of the scenario. Following the events of Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat, Anam, the All-Father, god of all giants, has become unhappy with his children. Giantish society operates under a caste system called the Ordning, with storm giants traditionally at the top of the pile, followed by cloud giants, fire giants, frost giants, stone giants, and at the bottom, hill giants. Dragons are an ancient enemy of giantkind. Indeed, the ancient giantess civilization of Astoria fell after a long brutal conflict with dragons. With the recent attempt to bring Tiamat into the world, and the small folk standing against her, Anam has become tired of his children's complacency and shattered the Ordning, pitting the 6 giant types against each other to see who really deserves to rule. The giants of the Savage Frontier are competing against each other to create a new Ordning. This has caused frequent incursions and invasions into previously human-held territories. Small folk don't really understand what's going on and can only speculate as to these new endeavours by giantkind. Arguably, the most powerful of all storm giants is King Hecaton. He rules from his citadel Maelstrom deep within the trackless sea, using the power of the Wormskull throne to keep his kin in check. Hecaton, over the last few years, has started to feel that giants were no longer the rightful masters of the world, and a few months ago his thoughts were made real with the Ordning being shattered. Shaken by the realisation that the giants of his court no longer recognised his rule, Hecaton did his utmost to hold things together by bullying lesser giants. Hecaton's wife, Queen Neri, has always had a soft spot for the small folk, and she always urged her husband to leave them be, which Hecaton, despite his inherent mistrust, did. Neri continued to visit the small folk, until one day she didn't return. Hecaton sent his brother, Imperator Uthor, to find her, and he did find her, dead, on an island where she used to interact with the small folk. Hecaton was filled with rage, and Uthor, who couldn't contain it, turned to Hecaton's youngest daughter, Princess Sarissa. Sarissa, who shared her mother's affection for the small folk and who was contentiously next in line for the Wormskull throne, urged her father to seek the truth before lashing out, which Hecaton did. Unbeknownst to Hecaton, his 2 eldest daughters, Mirren and Nim, fell under the sway of a female storm giant called Imrith. Mirren and Nim had been deemed unworthy of succeeding Hecaton, and instead he had selected Sarissa. Goaded by Imrith, who was playing on their unhappiness, Mirren and Nim had their mother assassinated. They then urged their father to hunt down the small folk responsible. They fed their father false information on the whereabouts of the assassins, and Hecaton promptly disappeared. In the wake of his disappearance, Sarissa has reluctantly claimed her father's throne. Mirren, angry that her father didn't choose her to succeed him, believes she is destined to rule, and plans to claim the throne and resurrect the ancient empire of Astoria. Nim, Hecaton's middle child, is cold and calculating. She plans on letting Mirren take the throne, and then when Mirren makes enemies of everyone, speaking out that she is unfit to rule. Imrith has fully convinced Nim that she has an important destiny to fulfill. Sarissa is seeing her political influence slowly dissolve. The giant lords in her father's court have all but abandoned her, seeking to impress Anam in their own way, and Sarissa fears a war between the giants, perhaps reigniting war with the dragons. Sarissa feels that she can only trust Imrith and her uncle Uthor. Using a piece of regalia called the Krollanor Sceptre, Sarissa has harnessed the power of the Wormskull throne, and yet even with its magic at her control she feels adrift. She wants to call to the small folk for aid, but thus far Imrith and Uthor have steered her away from it as they feel it would further anger Anam. Unknown to anyone in Hecaton's court, Imrith is actually an ancient blue dragon assuming the form of a storm giant. Imrith is fueling Mirren and Nim while simultaneously offering counsel to Sarissa. The dragon wants to wrest the power of the Wormskull throne from Sarissa. Imrith has put Mirren and Nim in touch with agents of Slarkrethel, a legendary kraken that haunts the trackless sea. They belong to the Kraken Society and are the ones responsible for killing Queen Neri. Imrith has planted rumours among Sarissa's court that the Lord's Alliance carried out Neri's assassination. Meanwhile, the Kraken Society, on the instructions of Slarkrethel, have captured King Hecaton and have him imprisoned on a ship called the Morkoth that circles the islands of the trackless sea. Following this, we have notes on the various giant lords. First up is Chief Gu. Gu is a gluttonous hill giant chief who has raised an enormous steading northeast of Golden Fields. She has instructed her numerous husbands to bring her as much food as they can, as her plan is to grow so big that she will become the largest giant in the world, and that is what will elevate her to the top of the ordning. Following her we have Thane Caelithica of the Stone Giants. She is withdrawn to her sanctuary in Deadstone Cleft, where she, after meditating for weeks, has decided that the way to push the stone giants to the top of the ordning is to wipe the land clear of small folk settlements, which she regards as filth. Jarl Storvald of the Frost Giants is next. Storvald has travelled across the sea of moving ice to reclaim Svardborg, the ancient home of his forebears. While doing this, he has found the eggs of a mated pair of white dragons and has enslaved them. He has set about plundering coastal settlements and is looking for the famous Ring of Winter so he can bring the Age of Everlasting Ice. Following him is Duke Zolto. Zolto has sent his minions to track down the pieces of the Vonindod, an ancient dragon-slaying colossus that was lost in battle and is scattered across the north. Zolto plans to reforge the Vonindod and unleash it upon the land. Unfortunately, his forge at his fortress Ironslag is not hot enough to repair the colossus, so Zolto plans to steal the fire primordial Megera that is trapped in the forge in the fortress city of Gauntlgrim. He has made a deal with the Drow houses All Arryn, who know the layout of the city, to steal it and bring it to Ironslag. Finally, we have Countess Sansuri. Sansuri has retreated to her cloud castle and is retrieving relics from the height of Ostoria. She is searching for a long-lost dragon hoard, but has yet to find anything. She has captured a bronze dragon, Felgalos, who she is torturing for information. After this, we have information on the various factions of the North and their current historical status, which includes the Lord's Alliance, the Emerald Enclave, the Order of the Gauntlet, the Zhentarim, and the Kraken Society. Next, we have notes on running the adventure and a basic adventure synopsis, including the optional idea that the player should start at level 5. Here we have an adventure flowchart which indicates what should follow what and the appropriate level that the players should be when they tackle it. A great idea. There's then a section on treasure and a handy chart for randomly generating items from a giant's bag. Chapter 1 is entitled The Great Upheaval. In this chapter, the adventurers are travelling to a settlement called Nightstone. As they get near to the settlement, they find it partially ruined and infested with goblins. Also, the famous megalith that gives the settlement its name has been dug up and removed. Here, the adventurers need to pick their way through the keep to find out what's happened and take care of the unwelcome goblin visitors. The players can pick up various side quests here and need to face off against a group of Zhentarim bandits called the Seven Snakes. The players need to seek out the settlers who are being held captive by a band of goblins in a local set of caverns called the Dripping Caves. Following the sojourn to Nightstone, the players encounter an odd cloud giant called Zephyros. His tower sits atop a cloud and rather sillily has a wizard's hat instead of a roof. Zephyros is an eccentric cloud giant wizard who poses no threat to Nightstone, who is investigating setting things right with regards to the ordning. Zephyros can help the characters by taking them in his cloud tower to various places. The players can have various encounters while in the tower, including a silver dragon. Chapter 2 is called Rumblings. Here, the players have the option to visit various places tied to the side quests they receive in Nightstone, Bryn Shander, Golden Fields, or Tribor. Here, the adventure takes the strange direction of giving the players a character to play in these various places. First up is Bryn Shander, the largest of the 10 settlements in the Icewind Dale area known as 10 Towns. Here we have the town mapped out and the important places noted. The crux of the stay here is when a group of 12 frost giants searching for the Ring of Winter attack the town and the players need to come to its defence, and depending on how the players handle defending the town, decides what side quests they pick up. Next is Golden Fields. Golden Fields is a walled temple farm dedicated to Shauntia. In Golden Fields, as per Bryn Shander, the players are given various other characters to play during its defence, and it is invaded by 6 hill giants and their large entourage. The players are given side quests by the NPCs as a result. Last up is Tribor. Tribor is a bustling mercantile town. As per the other 2 locations, the players are given a set of NPC characters to run when it is invaded by a pair of fire giants and their crew, and are given side quests as a consequence. Following this we have Chapter 3, The Savage Frontier. This details the civilised folk, the Northlanders, and the Reged barbarians that exist in the various tribes. Also detailed are the Uthgarth barbarians, who are also tribal. We are given details on the various races and a list of encounters and an encounter table. We then have details of all the major locations of the north, from Amphail to Zymorvan Hall, with most places given a paragraph or 2, and with some places given an encounter or 2. They also list all of the tribal burial mounds, that all seem to contain ancient giantess relics buried within them, but with no explanation at this stage as to why. This section takes up the lion's share of the book at 54 pages. Following this, we have some featured encounters that the players should have, like the Old Tower, which introduces them to Moog, a lovesick hill giant, and Harshnag the Grim, a legendary good-aligned frost giant warrior. The encounter with Harshnag is very important, as it sets up the next section of the game. Harshnag suggests journeying to the Eye of the Allfather, a giantess mountain temple where they can communicate with a divine oracle to learn how best to deal with the current situation. Harshnag can lead them there, and that leads directly to the next part of the adventure. Chapter 4 is called The Chosen Path. This details the journey to the Eye of the Allfather and maps out the complex. Here at Anam's temple, the adventurers can speak to the oracle and get answers to some of the questions they have, and discover that each of the giant chiefs has a conch that will take them directly to Hecaton's court. The oracle at the temple wants the adventurers to first prove themselves and ask them to retrieve lost giant artifacts from the tribal burial mounds, as detailed in the previous chapter. For each artifact that they return to the temple, the oracle gives them information on where to find the single giantess chief. When the players leave the Eye of the Allfather, they're greeted with an airship that is at their disposal, that is manned by members of the Cult of the Dragon. The famous ancient red dragon, Cloth, has told the cult to aid the adventurers in what they are doing and leaves a message for them to slay the giantess leaders and come to his hidden vale for a reward, a bargain that Cloth, of course, has no intention of keeping. After the players have delivered one or more giantess relic, they leave the oracle to see that the ancient blue dragon Imrith has appeared within the Eye of the Allfather to consult with the oracle. The dragon at this stage is far too powerful for the players to handle, and Harshnag will hold Imrith off while the players flee. Chapter 5 is entitled Den of the Hill Giants. Here, the players enter Grudhog, the steading of the gluttonous hill giant chief Gu. Here the players are faced not only with the hill giants, but also their ogre and goblin minions, and evidence of Gu's greed is everywhere to be seen. There are piles of rotting food and even a pig pen under the steading that is manned by an Etin called Oinka Boinka. Chapter 6 is called Canyon of the Stone Giants. The players venture into Dead Stone Cleft to fight the minions of Chief Kyolithika. Here the players can encounter the Blue Bear barbarian tribe and investigate a temple to Scoria's stone bones. Following this we have Chapter 7, which is named Berg of the Frost Giants. Jarl Storval, the Frost Giant chieftain, has laid claim to the ancestral home of his people, and when they arrive, he's actually not home. The players need to work out how to approach Svardborg and then navigate their way through it. They can even cut a deal with the captive white dragon, Isendrog, who wants her eggs returning. Chapter 8 is entitled Forge of the Fire Giants. Here, the players journey to Ironslag, the fire giant chief Duke Zalto's forge fortress. The adventurers will probably have to navigate themselves through the village of the seemingly benevolent but incredibly treacherous Yak folk to gain access to Ironslag. When in Ironslag, the players can face Duke Zalto, find the semi-built Vonindod, and even take back the recently stolen fire primordial Megira that lives in the furnaces here. Chapter 9 is Castle of the Cloud Giants. Here, the players travel to Lin Armal, the floating cloud castle of the twisted cloud giant chief Countess Sansuri. Sansuri's castle is populated by strange Aarakocra simulacrums that act as guards, and the adventurers will need to have their wits about them when they are even approaching the castle. Countess Sansuri is captured and is slowly torturing a bronze dragon, Felgalos, for information of an imagined dragon treasure hoard that she is seeking to gain Anam's favour. Chapter 10 is called Hold of the Storm Giants. When the players have one or more of the magical conchs, they gain the ability to travel to King Hecaton's court, the underwater hold of Maelstrom. Maelstrom sits 3,000 feet below sea level and is replete with giant crabs, sharks and giant clams. Here the players can expose Imrith's lies to Princess Sarissa while having to navigate through Mirren and Nim. Here the players can gain the trust of Princess Sarissa and also even feel the effects of the Wormskull throne itself. Once the players manage to expose Imrith's lies and Mirren and Nim's conspiracy, they are given a wooden coin with a golden goose painted on it by Princess Sarissa that was found by the body of her mother. This leads the players into Chapter 11, Caught in the Tentacles. This chapter has the players investigating the origins of the wooden coin. Investigation leads them to Yartar and a floating gambling den called the Grand Dame. Here they encounter the thoroughly unwholesome Caspia Dryland, and a show of strength is required from the players for him to confess to his involvement in the assassination of Queen Eri and the capture of King Hecaton. The players eventually find out where Hecaton is being kept, a ship called the Morkoth that plies the trackless sea with Hecaton in stasis in chains in the cargo hold. The players must use their wiles to locate the Morkoth and free Hecaton. After freeing Hecaton, if the players hang around for too long, the Kraken Slarkrethel shows up and pulls the Morkoth into the depths, taking anybody on board with it. Chapter 12 is called Doom of the Desert and is the concluding chapter. Here the players return with King Hecaton to Maelstrom, where he plots on finding Imrith. Imrith has a lair located in Anarok, and the players must journey there with King Hecaton to finally face Imrith. Imrith's lair is replete with traps, and Imrith herself, being an ancient blue dragon, gives the players a truly testing battle. The adventure concludes with the defeat of Imrith and ideas on how the Ordning is resolved. Appendix A details how this campaign can tie into the pre-existing ones in the 5th edition series. Appendix B gives details about the various new magic items from the campaign, including the various runes, the Krollenor Scepter, and the Wormskull Throne. Appendix C gives details on the creatures unique to this campaign and includes Megira the Dawn Titan and the Yakfolk. Appendix D gives details on the special NPCs that are scattered throughout the scenario. In conclusion, I feel that Storm King's Thunder is a mixed bag. The artwork throughout's good and the book is lovingly produced and the adventure synopsis gets you excited, but this is quickly dashed by the rinse and repeat scenario of defending strongholds against invading giants and their minions. The section on the Savage Frontier is frankly too long and left me bored many times while reading it, as well as confusing you by adding in the ancient tribal burial grounds with no explanation as to why until you read the chapter that follows. The sandbox nature of the game will not appeal to everyone, especially those groups with DMs that have time constraints with regards to preparation. I also felt that having a dragon as the major villain of the piece was just a bit lazy. Surely if this is a campaign set around giants and giant kind, more imagination could have been used in defining the big bad of the event. I also felt that there was a bit of bad game design around the magical conchs. You only need one of the magical conchs to teleport the whole party, and yet we have 5 methods of getting one described and statted out in full, which means that 4 out of the 5 could possibly lay unused, which seems an awful waste of some good material. The adventure does get good near the end when Hecaton is finally freed, but the idea that the literal king of the giants couldn't have a resurrect spell cast on his queen is slightly ludicrous, especially as the players are given the option and the outcome of doing this later on in the campaign. I also feel like the Vonindog could have been explored and utilised in a better manner, but I imagine that's more for a higher level campaign that they're working on. Okay, to the score. Storm King's Thunder is not bad, but not what I would consider great. The problem I have is that if I buy a campaign, I want most of the work done for me and not have to do extensive planning on it. With that in mind, I give it a decent, but not spectacular, 5.5 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to check out my other reviews. Bud out.